Monday the 3rd of January sees the start of the No BS Nutrition Kickstart. No BS standing primarily for no booze, no sugar. But we do have some additional elements you can add to make it a little bit more challenging. And that would be the avoidance of man-made starches and also processed foods. If you go onto the CrossFit blog, the latest blog post is all about the No BS challenge, and we've got details about what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, what you can score points for, how you can log your points on SugarWOD, etc., etc. So I won't use that today in my video. I won't go through that in detail. You can read that up and brush up on that later on. But why should we do this Kickstart? This is probably, for a lot of people, the most challenging of the Kickstarts we do. As you know, we have a macro tracking one, we have a no snack, and then we have the lazy macros one, which is more addition. This is the one that has the most restrictions into it. I always think it's a great way to start the new year, to get that kind of reset, and also a good way to get our body composition into the right place prior to the Open, which starts towards the end of February. We want to be as lean as possible when we're doing those Open workouts, because often there's a lot of bodyweight movements, a lot of stuff like almost guaranteed there's going to be a burpee in there. So the lighter you are, the easier those movements are. If we're looking to achieve our first pull-up or any bodyweight movement, handstand press up, then if we are lighter, we are more likely to achieve that. So we're definitely a good opportunity to do that and to learn a little bit as well. One of the things that I think is really valuable about this No BS challenge, well, first of all, is how does your body react when you eliminate sugars and processed carbohydrates from your diet? If you have an extremely adverse reaction, which a lot of people may well do, you may suffer from what we would call the keto flu. Keto being the diet where you're eating primarily fats with some proteins in it, and you're having minimal carbohydrates at all. And that's basically where your body suffers from the removal of those carbohydrates, especially the sugars from your diet. You have that sugar detox. Sugar is definitely addictive. And when you remove that, there is an effect on your body where you feel like you've got an element of the flu. You feel lethargic, you feel run down. Some of you will have some headaches, and it can be quite challenging. Before you start the Kickstart, I know that it starts on the 3rd and it's New Year's Eve on the 31st. There's not many days, but definitely try to slowly wean yourself off high quantities of sugar. And if you're going the full hog and you're removing bread and pasta from your diet from those days as well, then try to just wean those portion sizes down so we're not having that full cold taken. So that would be my first suggestion. The second thing I would say is make sure that before you start, you are fully prepared with other foods to replace that. What we don't want to do initially is to go into a huge calorie deficit. If you're primarily getting your calories at the moment from, let's say you wake up in the morning, you have maybe cereal and toast in your breakfast, and then for lunch you're having a sandwich, and then for dinner it's a pasta dish, and you're having sugars as well as your treats, maybe some alcohol and your energy source. Well, if you cut all that out, then you might end up with very little calories. So we don't want to end up in a position where you're in a huge calorie deficit and you've cut out sugar for the first time, because that will be a double whammy of effect, and you will definitely be hit hard by that. So make sure you have a little bit of planning involved before you start, so that you know you're going to get enough calories in your diet. So if you know you're not going to, you're cutting out all those processed carbohydrates for your breakfast, make sure you've got something. Make sure you've got a big bowl of yogurt, primarily with hopefully with a bit of fat in it, because the fat's going to give you that sustenance that you need. So don't go for the 0% fat yogurt. I would suggest you go for something with a little bit of fat in there to give you that sustenance. So make sure you've got, I don't know, some peanut butter in there to give you something you can sort of treat yourself and munch on. Just some elements where you're not getting to that those low points in the day where you feel like you need something to eat and you're really like shaking and craving some food. Make sure you have things to eat. Nuts and seeds are good, but if you're going to have nuts and seeds, then put them in small portion sizes. Don't get the big bag to work or wherever you're going to be sitting at your desk, because you can go through 1,000 calories in probably 10 minutes with nuts, because they're just such a high fat content. Just be aware of that when you are planning your snacks. If you're on the CrossFit Chiltern members group or even on Sugar WOD, and you've done this one before, please share any ideas that you had, any good substitutes you had that may help some other people doing for the first time, because I know that people can struggle with how they can substitute maybe the textures and the flavors of foods when you're taking those out. So get some forward planning in there. I have some previous blog posts in the past, but let's just say, I would say for breakfast, make sure you have an adequate, if you're having breakfast, of course, make sure you have an adequate substitute in that breakfast. So I love as my breakfast, when I'm not having these carbs, is I will have, like say Greek yogurt, maybe some fruit, maybe some banana in there. Banana's going to give you that sugar that you need. Because anything that's natural is unlimited as long as it's in its natural state. So dried fruit, you may see is not allowed because it's basically taking all the water out. The same if you juice, it's the opposite way around. Taking the fiber out, we want to be eating fruit in its natural state. But definitely have some banana, maybe with in your yogurt, maybe some pumpkin seeds on there as well, just to give a bit of flavor into there. I have allowed some teaspoons of honey in there as well, so maybe you want to sneak that in, but don't put all 3 teaspoons in one dish. That's not the aim of this challenge. Or you could just go for traditional English breakfast style breakfast, where you actually have some meat and eggs for your breakfast if you are a meat eater, of course, or just eggs if you're a vegetarian, or whatever that vegan substitute is. I'm not an expert on veganism. I'll leave that to some of the members that are vegans to give you some suggestions on what to replace that with. And I know that vegans will find this challenge particularly tough, because obviously a lot of the food in the vegan diet tends to be more carbohydrate based and can be quite processed as well. So if you're removing that, then you have to make healthy choices. It's definitely possible to do, but it's just more challenging, and you need to use the internet as a resource to help you out on that. And other vegans, I'm sure, have plenty of recipe ideas to help. Plan your lunches too. Make sure you have something that's a good substitute, and it gives you some sustenance. Don't take out, a massive sandwich. Let's say you have a baguette or whatever you have for your lunch, and put in 3 lettuce leaves and an egg. Okay, that is not going to be an adequate substitute. So just use tools. Use MyFitnessPal as a good tool, just to make sure you're getting the calorie allowance you want to be. Yes, if you're trying to create a calorie deficit, that's fine, but make sure it's a 10 to 20% deficit from your recommended daily allowance, not 50%, which is what happens with some people who have a plan in place and the same for your dinner. Try to make sure, if you're in a family environment, you've got kids and their access to treats and stuff, obviously it's more difficult. If there's just 2 of you, then it's much better if both of you are on board. Definitely, anytime you're doing any of these Kickstarts, the more people in the household that are on board, the easier it becomes, because you can take out the crappy food from the diet. You can make sure you're only cooking one meal for everyone. If you are cooking for a family and you don't want their family to be going through this as well, then just make sure you have substitutes. So if you're having pasta, you're going to have your courgette or fried courgette or something to replace it, or sweet potato. We're allowed to have unprocessed carbohydrates. So sweet potatoes are fine. Just obviously don't overload, don't go crazy on it, but just think about how you're going to replace your particular meal with whatever you're making for someone else. If you're used to buying sauces, then look at the packet, because often you get bolognese sauces or those that are man-made, and they will have high quantities of sugar. That's how they get the flavour, high quantities of sugar and salt to bulk the flavour up. Ideally, try and make your own sauces. It's a good opportunity to make those sauces if you're not someone who cooks generally for yourselves. It's definitely a good opportunity to learn those lessons, to make those basic sauces, because you can make those sauces with much lower quantities of sugar. And that's the education part of this Kickstart, is looking at those food labels, seeing, is there fewer than 10 grams or less than 10 grams of sugar per 100 grams? That's what we're looking at. Now that's a generous, I would say, a bit of leeway we've given. I think I previously done this at 5 grams 2 years ago, and that is incredibly difficult. You actually find that the majority of foods have, even like bread has more than 5 grams of sugar in some cases per 100 grams. So we've given you a little bit more leeway to say, if you want to be a bit strict with yourself, then you can do, but just look at that as an education when you look at the food labels, how much sugar is put into your processed foods. And obviously, if you're trying to avoid those completely, great. But if you are just trying to keep your sugars down, then it just allows you to make lower sugar processed food choices in there. So like I say, get your family on board, get your household on board. It's very difficult if you've got resistance. And obviously, if your family or people you live with insist on having those treats, then make sure you're avoiding sitting opposite them. It's going to be a massive challenge in willpower if someone put a tin of biscuits directly in front of you and they're scoffing them next to you, okay? That is not really fair. We're just looking for 4 weeks that people that support you, so maybe have a conversation with these people before it happens, just to say, this is about my health. I want to make sure I'm looking at myself. So can you please make sure that, if you're eating that stuff, maybe do it on the sly or put it to one side, not directly in front of me, so I'm not having to look at it and resist that temptation. The same if those of you who have alcohol and you can't resist a glass of wine, then make sure that the person isn't opening a bottle of wine right in front of you and just sitting ready face. If that's possible. I mean, hopefully you get them on board and they can join in, because we all want to make some positive changes to our health, hopefully, especially when you look at the effect that the last couple of years has had on those people that maybe are less healthy, tend to be suffering more so. Let's talk a little bit about replacements. I'll try and do some videos during the time, but replacing your sugars with polyols, sweeteners, you've got your aspartame, sorbitols, all of those more sugary foods. If you can avoid substitutes, then do so. But if this is the first time you've done something like this, then that is going to be exponentially better than taking sugar on board. Yes, we know your body can react to polyols in a similar way to having sugar, in terms of it kind of maybe craves more sugar because it thinks you're taking sugar on board. There is some argument that happens. So ideally, and they are a processed food if you're eating something, so if you're going full hog and hones, then you can't have them anyway. But if you're just going for no gluten, no sugar, and you're substituting sugar with that, that's the lesser of two evils, I would suggest. Some people may disagree, but I would suggest on this occasion. And that will be the same. Substituting anything as a substitute is, yes, we want to try and find a replacement when we're not substituting for something that's been man-made. But if that is the case, then please don't feel bad, because and the same for alcohol actually. If you find non-alcoholic substitute as well, is that ideally we want to just remove that need, so we're not thinking, right, I can't wait to have that beer becomes a non-alcoholic beer, and that's a massive step forward. A bit like cutting out smoking and replacing it with vaping, is one better, potentially, yes, I think. But there's definitely some side effects to that. But substitutions are fine. If you can avoid them, great. But if they get you through this Kickstart 28 days, and then next time you try and deal with that substitute, that's great. If the first time you've done it, then maybe take it, a level downwards. Don't make it too hard on yourself. If you've done it multiple times and you want to challenge yourself a bit more, then do so. It's a bit like you're doing a workout. You won't necessarily go in and do Fran RX the first time you come into the gym, but you might do it, scaled, and then make it more difficult. So think about, how you've done the Kickstart in the past. If you've done it in the past, how you found it. If you got through it quite easily, then yeah, maybe try and step it up a level this time around. The first thing we do, okay, we've got our planning involved. Definitely next week, try and come in and do your in-body scan. And then remember the protocols of the in-body, that you must do it before a workout, ideally fasted or maybe with a very light breakfast. Hydrated, to make sure you've had a glass of water of some kind, and you've also had a wee before you do it. Wipe your hands and feet with the pads that help get the conductivity, and then get yourself measured up. Do the same again in 4 weeks. That is going to give you the most accurate result. Ladies, if you're doing this around your cycle, then if it does hit in the middle of menstruation, it's not going to be ideal, as obviously you carry more water at those times. But if you measure it in 4 weeks' time, it should give you similar results. If you want to do something, then and do something in 2 weeks' time, and then do something in 2 weeks' time, and 2 weeks' time again, because that may be more in the kind of middle of your cycle. That'll give you more accurate results in the long term. That will be fine as well. That's a good way to go about it, because we know how much that weight can fluctuate during those times. Now I like multiple data points. So obviously body composition is one. The second one, maybe take a photo of yourself, just for your own private use, obviously, in your underwear, front on, profile view. Try and use the same lighting, the same positioning, because I know that you see these before and after photos, and one of them's done with terrible lighting, and one was done with like down lighting with the shading perfectly. They're looking a bit more tan, they've warmed it up so it looks amazing. Try and do it the same so you can have direct comparison. And then you kind of maybe have a pair of jeans or something that's particularly tight on you, or something that you know is maybe too snug, and you can try this again in that time. You've got that sort of the kinesthetic, the feel where you're kind of feeling like the clothes are coming off you. You've got the visual where you can actually see yourself in the mirror, and then you've got the data points as well. So you've got all those measures so you can check progress on it. There's a start point. So we're going to talk about, before we start, planning what you're going to substitute the food with before you do it. Clearing out the cupboards is another good one to do. You have to clear yourself out of stuff so that it's not there if you're able to do so, of course. Get people on board in your household, either on board and doing the Kickstart, or just make sure on board they're supporting you during this time. Take some data points, and I'm sure I want one more to tell you, but I can't remember right now. But get ready to start on that Monday. You've got obviously New Year's Eve, you've got the first and the second. So by the time the Monday comes, you should have cleared everything out. Just get yourself ready to go in a mental state to get started with this Kickstart. Use it as an education. Remember, all these Kickstarts, it doesn't matter if you mess up one day. The key is how many days out of 28 can you get done. So don't be like, oh, I fucked it up on day 2. I'm just going to go crazy now and just eat all the sugar and drink all the booze for the rest of the month because I fucked up. We're all going to make some mistakes. We're all going to break on one of those days. It doesn't matter. Yes, if you can get all 28 days, fantastic. But just think of it as, how far can I go through this Kickstart? And let's see if we can have some positive changes throughout that time. I think you all will see some positive changes. When I come back to the planning, what I would say is, have a look at the calories you're taking on board for those early days as well. So maybe for the first 5 days, use MyFitnessPal, just to make sure, first of all, you're having enough calories, but also that you're not substituting it. Because some people, I heard one of the coaches talking about how their problem is they substitute, and they put cheese as that, they substitute for sugar. And obviously cheese is highly calorific, and you end up, you might have a calorie surplus because you've gone from eating something that maybe is lower calories but high sugar to high fat, high calories, and bumpy calories over the top. So just be aware of that. So maybe use MyFitnessPal for the first few days just to make sure you're in that ballpark figure for calories. Good luck everyone that takes part. Any questions, please either drop them in the comments, drop me an email, jeremy@crossfitchiltern.com, or anywhere else you're looking to contact me. Email is always the best place to contact me if you're looking to contact me. Don't send me WhatsApps. Definitely don't send me Instagram DMs, because I am terrible at those. Same on Facebook. Comments, I'm always pretty good at replying to. Thanks for watching, and good luck.